Funding for the Maddy Report is made possible by grants from the Spencer family, Community Health System, Harris Ranch Resort, Producers Dairy, Valley Children's Healthcare, and The Wonderful Company. Additional support provided by from the Maddy Institute, the Public Policy Institute for the Valley's public universities. This is the Maddy Report with Executive Director of the Maddy Institute, Blake Zante.
Welcome to the Maddy Report. Today we're joined by Dolores Huerta, a renowned American labor leader and civil rights activist who helped co-found the United Farm Workers Union with Cesar Chavez. Dolores, thank you for joining us today on the program. Really appreciate you being here.
No, thank you for inviting me. I really respect the Maddy Report. I think everybody does.
Well, thank you. We are so glad to hear that. Something I love to ask every time we have a prominent guest on the program, could you just tell us a little bit more about you and your background, how you first became involved in activism, who or what were some of the motivations behind your start?
Well, I was born in the state of New Mexico, and very luckily there, my father was a legislator in New Mexico. He was elected to the state assembly there in New Mexico. And but my parents divorced, and my mother brought us to California, so I was raised in Stockton, California. So I grew up in the Valley. I got involved with farm workers in the 40s when they brought in the Mexican braceros to replace workers who had gone. As we know, many people had to go to war, so they brought in thousands of people from Mexico to come and fill the workplaces, but they were so badly mistreated, and so I started advocating for them with an organization that we then started, the Community Service Organization, which we had a chapter in Bakersfield also, all up and down California. We had chapters of that organization. But out of that grew my desire and needed to say we had to do something for farm workers. In that organization, I had met Cesar, and that was also his issue also, working down in the Oxnard area. And so when we both organized groups of farm workers, turned them over to other unions, but then they fell apart. So at that point, Cesar said, no, we have to just do our own union. And that's how we started the United Farm Workers.
Well, and as a woman in a leadership role during a time when activism was often a male-dominated era, what challenges did you face and how did you navigate them?
Well, actually, the farm workers themselves were so appreciative of the fact that somebody was actually trying to get them together, helping them organize. So I always had a lot of support. I think among the leadership of the United Farm Workers, I had a little bit more pushback from some of the other leaders, but from the workers themselves, they were very, very supportive.
And even after so many years in activism, you continue to be deeply involved in community. What keeps you motivated to keep fighting for social change?
Well, one thing I would hope that all of us will see in our or in your lifetime anyway, the day when farm workers get the same respect and the same salaries that policemen and firemen get. We talk about essential workers, but farm workers are the most essential workers because they feed the firemen, they feed the policemen, they feed the healthcare workers and all of us. And yet we know that they are still relegated to very low salaries compared and benefits that other people have. And also to get rid of the racism that we have in our country right now, a lot of the isms that I think we were making our way. I think we recently had big setbacks with the recent administration that wants to do away with the diversity, inclusion, and equity policies. But I think that we will be going back to that. And again, making workers' rights the foundation of our country, because workers are the majority of population. And we have to have a country that really thinks about workers first and billionaires secondly, or thirdly, or fourthly.
Well, thank you very much. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a moment, working in farm workers and some of the issues that are currently going on. Thank you. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. We will now be talking about Dolores' work at the Delano Grape Strike, which was a major labor protest that began in 1965 when Filipino farm workers from the Agricultural Workers Organizing Committee in Delano walked off work to demand fair wages and safer conditions. Later, Mexican-American workers, led by Dolores and Cesar Chavez, joined the strike, uniting under the United Farm Workers. Dolores, thank you again for joining us today. When the Filipino farm workers first began the strike in Delano, how did you and Cesar Chavez become involved, and what led you to decide to join their efforts?
Well, actually, the narrative is a little incorrect. Let me put it that way, okay?
Okay, great.
I mentioned to you earlier how in Stockton I had organized a group of farm workers. Well, that was one of them, AWOC, and that was the organization. And I hired Larry Iliong to help me organize that organization. But they were not interested in getting contracts. They were just interested in getting wage increases. And we knew that that was not sustainable. And so Cesar and I had actually begun organizing in 1962, but we were not going to go on strike until 1968. That was our plan. We were organizing throughout the whole Central Valley, from Delano all the way to Fresno, all the way to Merced and Madera, having house meetings with workers. And so we were not going to go on strike. When Larry and the AWOC workers went on strike, we thought, well, is this going to be another work stoppage for just higher wages? No, because we wanted to get union contracts to give farm workers medical plans and pension plans and the right to organize into a union and to pass legislation. Farm workers didn't have unemployment insurance then. They didn't have bathrooms in the fields. They didn't have cold drinking water or rest period. And these are the things that we wanted to get for farm workers, not just a wage increase, okay? And so we had to just kind of shelve our plans and then support the Filipino workers when they went on strike. And then we met with Larry, and then Larry Iliong, it said, okay, Larry, we want to join you, but we want you to make a commitment that this is not going to be a work stoppage for higher wages. We're going to go on strike to get union contracts and legislation to have a union. And Larry agreed.
Well, thank you. Thanks for correcting me as well on that. Negotiating with the growers, there must have been some challenges. What do you remember about those negotiations, and what eventually paid off? How did you balance that persistence and patience during that time?
Well, it really wasn't that difficult, because the things that the workers needed were so basic, and they knew that. And the agricultural industry is very, very wealthy. So there was no excuse why they couldn't give the workers what they needed, and much more, for that matter. But it was mostly the racism, I believe, that they didn't want to see farm workers organized into an organization. They still wanted to keep the remnants of slavery, that they could talk bad about the workers, treat them badly, and somehow this is okay. And so this was shaking up the whole establishment. And so it was kind of a class war in a way, you might say. And I think this was the basis of the resistance. And to this day, as the ag industry is very, very wealthy. There is no reason why farm workers still have to have work at minimum wages to this day. The industry can afford to pay them a lot more, and yet they don't.
Now, there were certainly a lot of lasting impacts from that strike, but as you referenced, there is definitely work that is still being done. How do you think that this movement helped shape some of the current efforts in organizing in the United States today?
Well, many of the labor unions copied some of the tactics that the farm workers used, like boycotts and, the massive appeal to workers to get them to join in. And so they copied a lot of the tactics. But the real problem that we have today is that we don't have the legislation that supports worker organizing. And you have the same scenario all over the United States. You have it with Starbucks. You have the same thing with Amazon, where workers organize. They vote for a union, but the company refuses to bargain with them, to negotiate with them, or to sign contracts.
Thank you, Dolores. We'll be right back after this break. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back to the Maddy Report. We have Dolores Huerta joining us on the program today. Thank you so much again for being here on the Maddy Report. I'd like to talk about some of your current activism and the impact you're making today. Throughout your career, you've worked closely with policymakers to advocate for labor rights, education, and social justice. Can you share an example of a policy or initiatives that you're closely working on right now?
Well, as you know, all of us were dedicating all of our time to Prop 50 right now to make sure that that proposition passed, because we know that the current Congress is the one that has really given our tax dollars to ICE and the terrible treatment of our undocumented people that we have, including farm workers, in our country right now. So we have been dedicating a lot of our time to that. We have a very strong youth program with the Dolores Huerta Foundation. We're trying to stop that school-to-prison pipeline that unfortunately still exists very much here in our society. And the way that we work at the local level to get people to take on the issues in their community and to solve the issues that they have. And we don't do it for them. We organize them, and they make out an action plan, and then they decide to go for it, and these are the things that then they decide that they're going to work on. And so we've had a very, very many great victories, including getting a brand new gymnasium in Arvin that the people didn't have before, but the people there went door to door. They got petitions. They passed the bond issue. Recently also we celebrated something that took many, many years, and that was to get an extension of the Bakersfield Community College also in the town of Arvin. And in Moscow, the people there are working on trying to get a soccer field they're really concerned about teenage, you might say, kids getting into crime, and they want to keep them off the streets and get them into playing soccer. So each community takes on the issue that they want to solve in their own community. And we don't determine that for them, they determine that for themselves, because then they have to do the work. And when they do the work, that's where the leadership grows.
I appreciate you sort of painting those different examples. You talked about some of the larger national and statewide efforts, but also some of the local community efforts that you're involved in and helping organize as well. Going a little bit back, you mentioned Proposition 50, and you've been outspoken against the Trump administration's immigration policy and the mass deportations. How do those policies impact communities that you work with, particularly here in the Valley? And from your perspective, what do you think needs to be done to protect immigrant families moving forward?
Oh, well, it has been, as you know, devastating. I think it also hurts the economy. But if people aren't working, they don't have money to spend. And so, of course, the emotional distress and the separation of families. We have been also very involved in the Rapid Response Network right now, getting food to families, getting rental assistance to families when they have someone in their family that has been deported. We've been very, very active in trying to close a prison in California City, which we believe was opened without the proper permits to begin with. And so that's been a constant campaign that we've been working on now for many, many weeks now. And again, that organization, Core Civic, that now has a detention center. Many people, as you know, have died in those detention centers. The conditions are horrific, and that's one of our main objectives that we're doing now. This whole, in the past, and as you know, I'm 95 years old now, but in the past when we had deportation, people were repatriated. They weren't kidnapped. They weren't assaulted. They weren't killed. They were just sent back to the country of origin. And then, of course, then we had these big amnesty programs and then brought people back in after people had already been deported. Then, we passed laws to bring them back in again. And I'm assuming that that's going to happen here also, because that has been the pattern of our immigration policies in the United States.
Thank you, Dolores. We're going to take another quick break, and then we'll be right back after this to conclude our show. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back to the Maddy Report. Dolores, thank you again for joining us on the program today. Before you go, I'd like to talk about the work that's being done by the Dolores Huerta Foundation. Could you tell us just a little bit about what does the Dolores Huerta Foundation do, and what inspired you to create it? And also, what are some of the key issues that the foundation is focusing on?
Well, when I left the Farm Workers Union in the year 2002, we had talked, Justin and I, about the families that are left behind. Because when you're working for the union, you're working for the members, again, for their benefits and the wages, et cetera. But in the meantime, there's other needs in the community that are not being met. And so when I left the United Farm Workers, I decided to devote my time to those issues, like we did back in the Community Service Organization, which was the organization that preceded the United Farm Workers. And so This is what we did a lot of work on the census. We registered tens of thousands of people for the census at a time when it was very difficult. And as you know, there was a lot of fear in the community. We did a lot of work during COVID. We vaccinated close to 40,000 people against COVID. We did huge food banks against COVID. And so and then we did a lot of work on the redistricting. We formed a unity group on the redistricting, and we were able to get the first Punjab person elected in Bakersfield to the city council of Bakersfield. So, the civic work is continuing, and it's something that we're very committed to.
Now, you mentioned this previously a little bit when you were talking about organizing local communities here in the Valley, but could you just talk a little bit more? How does the Dolores Huerta Foundation work with local communities to encourage civic engagement and empower people to take action on the issues that matter most to them?
Well, we use the same method that the great Fred Ross Sr. taught us. And, there's a documentary about him called The American Agitator. I don't know if you've seen that documentary. I really would like to ask everybody to try to see that documentary. But this is a man who taught Cesar and myself how to organize. And as I mentioned before, we did it through house meetings, meeting in people's home, family by family, family by family. And this is the same method that we use with our Dolores Huerta Foundation. We meet with people, and then we ask them to come together. They make a laundry list of all of the issues that they have in their community, and then they decide which of the many, many issues they're going to solve. They have to prioritize. They have to pick the top 3 issues that they're going to work on. And then they make an action plan, and then they have to volunteer to do the work. And in the volunteering of doing the work, this is where their leadership comes up, and how they become leaders. And so in every community, you have different issues that they might address, but they know that those are the issues that are important to them. And they start working on them. And sometimes they're issues that can be solved quickly. Other times it takes years. But eventually they are able to make sure that what they need, their needs are met. But the most important thing, that they are the ones that do the work, that they don't have to wait for somebody to come in from the outside. And so then you have a lot of local leadership that is developed that way.
Now, looking ahead, what are your hopes for the future of the Dolores Huerta Foundation, and how do you see its role evolving in meeting the needs of new generations and new struggles for equality?
Well, we know that many of the issues that we've been working on are, unfortunately, they're still with us. We have the whole issue of global warming. We know that the Central Valley, and especially the southern part of Central Valley, is one of the most polluted areas that we have in the United States of America right now, here in Kern County, and it's very, affects the health of our people, especially our children. And so those are some of the big issues that we have to keep working on a policy level. And then again, the health needs, again, also very, very big here in the area. And again, stopping that school-to-prison pipeline. We still have a lot of our young people that are going to prison we should be finding more occupations for them. And so, just carrying the whole transition from oil to fossil fuels, which is a really, really, really big issue here in the Valley also. You name it. I think the Central Valley, we are the, when you talk about the isms, I mean, we are like the #1 area, you might say. So many things that are wrong in our communities that have to be solved.
Dolores Huerta, thank you for joining the Maddy Report today. It was great having you here, and it was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. I consider it a great honor to be on the Maddy Report.
Well, likewise. It's an honor that we had you on today.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of you for tuning into the Maddy Report. To learn more about the Maddy Institute, visit themaddyinstitute.org. What makes a community thrive? How do we bridge the gap between government and policy and the people it impacts? The Maddy Institute was founded to answer questions like these, to create a link between government and the citizens it serves, and to inspire a new generation of leaders dedicated to public service. In 1999, the California legislature unanimously established the Maddy Institute in honor of former California State Senator Kenneth L. Maddy. Senator Maddy was widely respected for his commitment to bipartisan solutions and his dedication to the people of California's Central Valley. Known for his ability to work across the aisle, Senator Maddy believed that effective government begins with respectful dialogue, evidence-based policy, and a commitment to the common good. Today, the Maddy Institute continues his legacy. Our mission is threefold. 1, to promote more effective and inclusive government. 2, to encourage civic engagement. And 3, to conduct research on key issues impacting the Central Valley. Through these efforts, we aim to educate, inspire, and empower the next generation of public servants and community leaders. One of the most impactful ways we fulfill this mission is through our internship programs. Each year, the Maddy Institute provides opportunities for students from the Central Valley to work in legislative offices, both in Sacramento and Washington, D.C., as well as local government agencies. These internships give students real-world experience in policymaking, allow them to see government in action, and help them build the skills they need to make a difference in their communities. But the Maddy Institute isn't just for students. Through our civic engagement programs, we create opportunities for everyone to participate in the political process. From community forums to workshops, we bring people together to discuss important issues facing the Central Valley, like water management, air quality, economic development, and education. These events foster open dialogue, allowing citizens to engage directly with policymakers, experts, and others, creating a stronger and more informed community. And to ensure the public stays informed, the Maddy Institute produces the Maddy Report, a weekly public affairs broadcast that covers the latest issues impacting California. Each episode features interviews with lawmakers, journalists, and subject matter experts, providing insights and analysis on topics that matter to our region. Whether it's understanding new legislation or exploring solutions to local challenges, the Maddy Report is a trusted source of information for those who want to stay engaged. At the heart of everything we do is a belief that good governance requires an informed and engaged public. From nurturing young leaders to fostering dialogue, the Maddy Institute is dedicated to creating a future where the people of the Central Valley can thrive. Join us as we continue Senator Maddy's legacy. Together, we can build a brighter future, one informed and engaged citizen at a time. The views expressed in the Maddy Report are those of the individuals participating in the program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Maddy Institute. If you'd like to share your thoughts about today's episode of the Maddy Report, please visit our website at maddyinstitute.com.